Hey, you guys. Thanks for being with us. This is Richard Sachs, your host on Lost Arts Radio. This is a special live stream presentation, which will also be on Blog Talk Radio for the audio portion. And it's really a great opportunity because we got a chance to talk to one of our favorite older show guests, which is Dayna Martin, known for her work with radical unschooling. And her books that she's written that we'll get a chance to talk to her about, and speaking and teaching and coaching and demonstrating what she's actually teaching too, which is exciting. Education is a subject I've been really interested in since I was in junior high school, and realizing that the subjects were all really interesting to me, except for I hated all the classes because it was completely unnatural and just kind of pushed into an arbitrary format and memorization instead of learning. And even at that age of 11 or so, I realized there was a radical difference. So people have done something about that, provided an alternative, which is what Dayna is immersed in. And I'm really looking forward to getting to hear all about that. So thank you, Dayna. Welcome. Thanks for being here. And let's see where it goes. We're just going to sit around and talk and see what happens. So we'll find out all about what you're doing.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. I'm excited to live stream.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So where I want to start, because even though we've got hopefully a lot of your people and a lot of our people online watching who already know a little bit or more about unschooling, some people don't, and I always like to cater in these broadcasts to the people who are just coming into it for the first time. They don't know what an unschooling might be, and they might not know you yet. So let's go back to before you started it and kind of introduce yourself as somebody in the stages of discovering all this and how you got into it, and then we'll get into what you're doing now.
Okay, so I'm a mother of four.
Okay.
A 10-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 19-year-old, 2 boys and 2 girls.
Okay.
Before they were here, when I first became pregnant, it was a whole new world to me, learning about parenting and birth, and I decided I wanted to go a natural route. And so when I gave birth to my son, I gave birth to him in a hospital with a midwife, and I had a wonderful natural birth. I had no idea that I was capable of doing that, but I did. And I was so inspired to help other women experience that I became a childbirth teacher and a doula. And I went on having more children. I had the rest of the kids at home. And I went on to help educate and support hundreds of people giving birth naturally and outside of the matrix, outside of the hospital, and some inside the hospital. So it was quite a journey. Well, as my kids got older, I noticed as they were getting older, I was told a lot of parenting advice that I shouldn't hold them too much. When they were babies, I was told that if they cried, I needed to let them cry. They needed to learn to self-soothe and to not feed them when they were hungry. They had to be put on a schedule. And every bit of advice I heard when I was a young mother made no sense to me. It seemed so against everything that my instinct was telling me. And I just wanted to be close and hold my children and feed them when they needed it. And so I decided not to listen to anybody but my children, my son. First child, and that's what I did. And so he grew up and learned to walk and talk and was supported. None of my kids ever slept in a crib. They all co-slept safely. And I educated a lot of other people in how to parent that way. And I became a breastfeeding counselor with La Leche League, and I started writing articles. And so I was a real advocate from the beginning because my experience with my son was nothing like anyone had ever told me it could be. It was so fear-based and so control-based, and I was doing things differently than anyone I ever knew. But luckily, we had just gotten the internet. It had just kind of started, and I joined a couple forums, and I learned that what I was doing was called attachment parenting. Well, I went on parenting that way, and when it came time for school age, it just didn't make sense to me to put my kids in school at 3 or 4 years old, and they wanted to be with me, and they were learning wonderfully, and we had a wonderful, rich, happy life together. So I started researching alternatives, and I learned all about unschooling, and I learned about it through Jan Hunt, who had the first ever information online about unschooling, the Natural Child Project, and all of her articles are still on there, and she's a good friend of mine. She's a wonderful woman. And so I learned that what I was doing was unschooling. So I went on and learned more and more, and I learned about something called radical unschooling. Now, radical unschooling is a term that's been around for a little while, and unschooling has been around as a term since the 1970s. It started when an author called John Holt. He wrote books about how children learn and how children fail. And the books that he wrote were just crazy radical for the time. I mean, it was just people read it and they couldn't believe that somebody would talk about children and freedom and not forcing them to go to school. And he was a huge pioneer that really is the inspiration for many people that are unschooling today. And the term unschooling actually came, and you'll laugh at this because I bet you guys remember. Remember the commercials for 7-Up, the Uncola?
Yeah, I do.
Well, unschooling, it was a joke by John Holt. He said, I'm gonna teach people to unschool after the Uncola commercial came out.
Okay.
And so it was
okay.
a joke term, but it's really stuck in the movement. And I think it's so important for people to understand that unschooling is not uneducating. It's unschooling. It's unconditioning. It's deconditioning your mind to see things in schooly terms, to realize that learning is everywhere and it never has to be forced. So unschooling is not uneducating. It's just not doing school and not doing school at home. So have any questions come up at all from you, Richard?
Yeah, a few. First of all, this idea that you're supposed to let your kids cry and stuff like that you were hearing, was that connected with all the people reading those books by Dr. Spock? I just seem to remember.
Yeah, I mean, and Dr. Ferber, letting babies cry it out. Ferber, I think, popularized that. He has since decanted that entire theory, which is really interesting. Nobody hears about that, but he was promoting it and then completely decanted, I think like a decade ago, for people to stop doing that because it was proven dangerous. But people still. So, I mean, I think I was told to do it by people that had done it themselves. I think my attitude and promotion of listening to my child and not doing that to them really triggered a lot of people. People were really defensive about the fact that I wasn't doing what they thought they had to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, hospitals were not as controlling in the 70s let's see, what year was it 19 years ago for your son? That was 1999 or 8 or 9 or something. Yeah. And so the hospitals weren't as dangerous of a place as they are now, I think, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of them, it kind of ebbed and flowed. There was a time where they were way worse. Suzanne Arms was a real pioneer who wrote the book Immaculate Deception, and she would sneak into hospitals in the 70s and the 60s and 70s and record what was happening. Wow. So, I mean, it was way worse earlier, actually, like in the 50s especially, when there was twilight sleep and they would strap women down when they were giving birth. So it's progressively, it kind of is like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I think I was in the time period in my area where we were kind of in a step forward and I had also been advocating and talking to people about natural birth. So, and I demanded what I needed. I think that was a really important thing, was I was a good consumer. I learned that I needed to be a good consumer, and I had a birth plan, and I had people with me that knew my needs. And
I mean, it's amazing they let you do that, because now they don't do stuff like that. In most hospitals. You brought a midwife, and they won't, especially with boy babies, they want to do some pretty intense things to them right after they're born, right?
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
Well, sadly, that was something I wasn't as educated about. And with my first child, my son Devin, I didn't know. I was told by everybody around me that it was just something that they had to do, and I didn't research it. Now I take full responsibility for that. So Devin was circumcised, and
right.
But I can still remember, and there's a reason why. And it's funny, I've spoke to Devin about this a few times, and my son Orion, who wasn't, thankfully. But at the time, I remember the doctor coming in and just saying, just hand him to me, just give him to me, and I'll be right back. It's not a big deal. And I can remember like sitting and watching TV and thinking to myself, what did I just do?
Wow. You knew that right at the time, huh?
It had to have been some kind of instinct. I don't know what happened, but it hit me. What did I just do? Like, oh my God. And I just started panicking. And my husband at the time, Devin's father, I think they took Devin and they're circumcising him, and I don't even really know what that means. Are they hurting him? And before I knew it, Devin was back, and they handed him to me. And I remember looking down at him and crying and just saying, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. And it was like this moment of, it's my biggest parenting regret, maybe my only parenting regret, actually, like ever. But that went on, that moment of just ignorance, chosen ignorance, because I was told, it's between the father and the son. It's just, you stay out of it. It's the thing
yeah. You wouldn't understand anyway, so.
Right. And, it's funny because you're talking to men in your family, and they don't want the child, to look different. And it really triggers their inner insecurity to think, oh, you have to do it. I had it done.
It-
So as
they
I
don't
went on,
know. Yeah.
as I wanted to be a childbirth teacher, that was something. The whole last class out of a 8 series of classes, we
Yeah.
talked about, shared my story, and I had videos that people borrowed. And I don't think there was more than 5 people out of hundreds that chose to circumcise after they were done my class.
Right.
So,
I can imagine.
it was a really big emotional deal. And
Yeah, almost nobody gets through this place unscathed. I mean, it seems like the way humans learn things is to be just, cut up in shreds. And then hopefully if they're still alive, they start to figure some of it out.
Yeah. I think it wasn't until I was holding him, until after we had that bond and I was connected with him and breastfeeding him. It was like 2 days after. And they came in, and it was just like that connection and that attachment when he was taken from my arms. That's when it hit. What did I do? What am I doing?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instinct is something really looked down on by so-called science, even though it's a science that's fake in most cases.
Yeah.
These animals are just inanimate objects running around on instinct, and anything related to that in humans is to be completely disrespected. But It's really pretty powerful.
And that was the first time I ever felt instinct like that, I have to say.
Yeah.
Because I had a C-section or would have had an epidural, and I would have had to have been rescued from birth. If Devin had to be cut out of me, and I never had the process of a natural birth, it would have never triggered.
Right.
Not that it did. That instinct that I felt instantly turned on the second they took him from me. And I called to the nurse and screamed. And they came to me and, oh, it's okay, dear. It's going to be okay. He'll be right back. And I said, I want my baby. I want him back now. And I freaked out. And it was too late. But It was the time, and I swore to him when I looked at him, when I was holding him in my arms, I said, I will never, ever, ever, for the rest of your life, ever do that again. I will listen to that inner voice. So, yeah, that's my story.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry to make it kind of an emotional interview, but I like these things to be real. And I think that it's so late in the game for this planet that we can't afford to be fake anymore. I mean, that's the whole thing underlying unschooling, right? I mean, we're supposed to be living in that theme all the time.
Exactly.
What about the thing where they want to put these stuff in their eyes? Did you escape that or not?
I did escape that. I think I escaped every other intervention, and for some reason with a circumcision, I just wasn't educated about it. I don't know why. I think I wanted to leave it up to Devin's father. I wanted him to have that responsibility and to make that choice, because I was making like the choices, it seemed like, with everything else.
Well, it would make sense if he was aware of that.
Right. Yeah.
He could do that, but almost no men are. They don't know what it's about. It's something that becomes common and people think it's normal.
This is true. And that's
now, the other thing that's different between the 70s and hospitals now is on the first day, they also take them away and give them an injection of all these poisonous cocktails.
Oh, yeah. They did. I did not either. I researched and I didn't, none of my kids were vaccinated. Devin, I vaccinated. I think he had like 3 vaccines spread out over the course of a few months because I had researched it. And they gave me such a hard time about spreading them out and not combining them. I actually got a reputation in my town with all the nurses and doctors. They used to call me nuts and berries. That was like my nickname. They would say I was like granola, and that I would recommend people, not keep their kids safe. And so I got a reputation for recommending against vaccines. But
right. You're practically anti-science, right?
Oh yeah, completely. Crazy.
But real science isn't anything like that anyway. So you're not really anti-science.
That's true.
Real science is going on intuition and then setting up experiments to learn if the intuition is understood and that sort of thing.
Exactly. And, the whole idea of keeping our culture dumbed down through public education and traditional education, there's a purpose and an intention. As conspiracy theorist as it might sound, it's true that the intention is to keep people dumbed down in society. And so when you go to the system and then you become a parent, you maintain that kind of dumbed down mentality and you just say the experts know, I don't know. Luckily, I learned and I came out of it with almost everything with my kids. So
yeah, it sounds really good. Now, when you do your service as a doula for women who are pregnant and want to have a good experience with having the baby and everything, I'm imagining that there's people who know about you and they don't all live where you live. So who are you able to do that with?
So I'm a lay midwife. So I'm a midwife doula, And so I've delivered babies. I've delivered babies in different countries. People hire me to go to different states. So I'm kind of, I rarely do births in my area. So I have a like kind of underground reputation of allowing women freedom and to empowering them to do it themselves while I'm there. So a lot of people that are maybe not 100% comfortable with fully unassisted birth will hire me, and just to have me there just in case. Empower them to do everything on their own as a couple. But I have all the equipment and everything with me, from a birthing tub to, I mean, you name it. We have everything, nothing medical, but we have everything, all natural ways to handle everything. So I've been educated for a really long time, self-taught and through different methods. I worked at the Birthwise Midwifery School for a while. And so my life has been surrounded with birth workers and women who are classically trained and have mentored me and taught me. So, I love doing it.
So you travel and is it mostly in the people's houses, not in hospitals?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, I'm in a hospital, so I can't be a midwife in a hospital. So if somebody wants me to attend their birth, I'm a doula. If I'm doing a birth at home, I'm serving as a midwife. There's the distinction.
So wait, you said you could be a doula in a hospital? Is that
a doula and a midwife? So a doula handles emotional support for a woman or for a couple during labor and birth. They don't do anything. They kind of handle everything above the waist.
Okay.
Midwives, assist in delivering.
Right. So midwives are if it's at home, and
correct.
The doula is allowed to come in the hospital, though.
Yeah, I'm not a certified nurse midwife, and only certified nurse midwives are allowed legally to work in a hospital. So I deliver babies in most states and most countries as a lay midwife, but I can't deliver babies in a hospital.
Okay. So if somebody wants to know more about that, how do they find out from you more details?
Oh, all they have to do is message me, either through social media, through Facebook, or email me. And I'm happy to give you my what I offer, the different packages I offer.
Okay. Where do they find your email?
Okay, so you can go to daynamartin.com, DAYNAMARTIN.com, and you can email me through there, or you could email me through DaynaLMartin@gmail.com.
Okay, neat. All right, so I didn't want to interrupt you too much because you were just coming up in the sequence of time,
Right.
I think you got to after Devin was born and a little bit later, and then so let's pick that up again.
Okay, well, I just started researching different, I was already giving classes and advocating and having meetings for breastfeeding and birth, and then parenting, attachment parenting support groups. And as my kids got older, my advocacy grew with it. And I began educating people about, first it was homeschooling, and then I learned about Waldorf, and then unschooling as well. I realized that we had been doing all along. And so I started educating people about unschooling and freedom. And I had a Yahoo group, and I would speak at tiny little conferences. And I started supporting people in the same way I was with everything else I had done. And then I decided that it was probably time that I write a book about it. I was really passionate about it. My kids I had 3 other children. So I was either pregnant or breastfeeding, I think, for 13 years straight. And so there was a really big chunk of time in my life where I was like deep into motherhood, but at the same time, I was educating and supporting other people. With every second I had, I was writing about it. I must have wrote 5 books worth of information, like on Yahoo groups, supporting other people and educating other people. So it just became a passion. And you know what happened before then? Before I wrote the book, it was really funny. Like, somebody posted a link in a Yahoo group that said, "Oh, Dr. Phil is looking for homeschoolers on the show. And so if anybody wants to fill this out, go ahead." And I said, heck with it. I'll click on the link. And I clicked on the link, and I started filling it out. And I'm like, yeah, I don't homeschool. I do what's called unschooling. In fact, it's called radical unschooling. And I filled out all of it completely honestly. I never thought anything of it. I yelled out to Joe, the kid's father, and said, "Oh, when Dr. Phil calls, just so you know, I filled out a thing." And he laughed, and that was it. Yeah. Well, a month later, the phone rings. It's Dr. Phil show. And they said, "We want you on the show. We're going to send a crew out there in 5 days to film your whole family." And so we went from a small town family, never having done anything like that, to being full blown in the media. It was the first time anyone had ever appeared on TV speaking about unschooling. And it was like a media frenzy. We went on TV probably a dozen other times on all different shows, from Nightline, oh my goodness, to Fox News, to CNN, to like all these other talk shows, the Jeff Probst show. it became like a whirlwind of calls of different news and media outlets wanting me on. And so all of a sudden I was thrust in this realm of kind of this weird underground fame, I guess, for what we were doing. And I was still, I had 4 kids, or I had 3 kids when we were on Dr. Phil. I hadn't even had Orion yet. And so my children literally grew up behind the lens of a camera with the world seeing them. We had a YouTube channel. We had blogs. We had, my goodness, we had unschooling. We've been doing unschooling conferences for years. So I decided to write a book, and that also really took off. And so our story isn't typical. We're not like the typical unschooling family. We're an unschooling family that basically introduced it to the world and said, this is an amazing life, and we're not afraid to talk about it. Like, nobody would talk about it. I was condemned by the entire unschooling community and rejected from my own community for popularizing it, for being willing to speak about it publicly, because people were petrified that there would be regulations because I was speaking out.
Right.
No regulations ever happened. In fact, it was the total opposite, and I knew in my heart that what I was doing was right. I feel like I was like just guided again by instinct for a passion, for a calling. And ever since that time, it's just been a roller coaster ride. And so here I am, 20 years later.
So what's the difference for people between unschooling and radical unschooling, and what was your progression from going from one to the other?
Well, to me, I was doing radical unschooling from the beginning, but there is a distinct difference, and this is where it gets controversial. So I think most people could understand and wrap their heads around what unschooling is. So unschooling is not doing school at home. In a sense, it's living life as though school doesn't exist, but you are your child's the facilitator of their learning. And
excuse me, but I should have also put in the other step of homeschooling, because that's the one that most people know about.
Okay.
So maybe what you could do is compare regular schooling, even private, to homeschooling, to unschooling, to radical unschooling. Okay,
I will do that. So a school like Waldorf, I think, is a little bit, it's a step out of the mainstream. It's not public education. It's a more natural approach. That's a more natural approach. I was really attracted to the aesthetics of Waldorf. I loved it when I first heard about it. We actually have a Waldorf toy company that we started because I was so passionate about it. However, the curriculum was nothing that I felt comfortable forcing, and that's where I differed in the philosophy. So it's a more gentler approach with Waldorf. Let's see, regular homeschooling is doing what schools do. No, this is generalizing. I'm sure there's exceptions.
Yeah, that's okay.
We're not like that, but so generalizing, homeschooling is doing school at home. So most parents will buy a curriculum, just like a school has, and they their kids have to do a curriculum at the kitchen table or somewhere, and they're kind of made to do schoolwork, and then they turn it in. The difference is the location, not the curriculum and not the content. And I'm sure it's a little safer in some ways with a lot of negative things that go on in school. Yeah. And then there's unschooling, which is not using a curriculum. It's kind of stepping away from the entire premise of school in general, because a lot of people just don't feel as though all children should learn the same things in a curriculum. It's not natural that we're all meant to learn different things and experience different things in life, and we all have a different purpose. So unschooling really honors, actually, I have a quote on my Facebook page today. I post a lot of quotes, some thoughts that I have when I first wake up in the morning, and I just type them out. But it's about, so education is not the goal of unschooling. It is a close family connection, the foundation of healthy relationships, pursuing our passions together, just constantly facilitating and honoring my children's interests. And an education happens as a side effect of living that life, but it never comes before family or love or foundation or connection, which is where schools really, where you're not free. If your child's in school, the agenda of the school comes before your freedom. You cannot get your child out of school with having to ask permission from the institution. And I'll tell you right now that you're not free. If you need to ask an institution permission to be with your child, and that in itself is unbelievably just invasive and just terrible to me. So
isn't it funny how everybody gets used to stuff that's completely way ridiculous, like that? And just because everybody's doing it, your brain kind of just puts it into the background. It's not an issue anymore.
Exactly. And so I never cut my intuition. That I always knew how wrong that was. And I think parents are conditioned from the moment their baby's born for separation from them. Yeah. to separate mother and child, parent and child, and with all these weird different recommendations and methods. So you dull that inner voice that knows these things. So yes, so that is unschooling. And radical unschooling. So with regular unschooling, it's natural learning. It's the fact that children will learn what they need to learn when they're ready through facilitation and support. And it's a trust-based philosophy. It's trust that children will learn when they're internally motivated. And radical unschooling is taking that same trust that you have for your child's education and extending it outward in every area of your child's life. Now, this is the part where people get a little freaked out. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that somebody would live this way. But hear me out. I've raised kids this way. I've helped thousands of people. This is reality, and it does happen. My children have never had limits. They've had complete freedom with bedtime, with food, with media, with technology, with hygiene. Every area of their lives they have choice with. Now,
wow. Okay, and that's the radical unschooling difference, right?
Unschooling is taking the trust. Like unschooling is trust with education. It's complete trust and love with education, which I really think in this day and age that comes really easy to people because the internet and information is everywhere. And I just think that schools are like so old school and so caveman and so unevolved that a lot of people that are probably listening are much more evolved, and it makes sense that education could be a trust-based thing. It's harder for people with peaceful parenting, with whole life or radical unschooling. It's harder for people to really decondition from, because if they were controlled as children themselves, like most of us were, right, it's really hard to believe that a child would make good, healthy choices if given freedom, but they will. But there is the process of undoing and healing and deprogramming that you have to go through, and that you have to allow your child to go through if you have controlled things in the past. And that's what I specialize in. That's what I help people with. I do coaching, and I have calls regularly helping people through this philosophical approach. So I know it takes time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the conventional background would be thinking, well, all the kids are going to be illiterate. They won't know how to do any arithmetic, and they just won't know anything about history, all the stuff they actually don't teach anymore. But they'd be worried that they miss all that stuff. And they also will be terrified and unable to deal with another person because they're not in this big group all the time.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak on that too if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I'd like you to.
I know I can get off on little tangents.
Those are good tangents, don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because children are in school. They're kept away from society. They're not in the real world. They're kept in a brick building all day, every day for 12 years, completely away from society, and that is not socializing. Our children that are living this free life are out socializing in their community. They're connecting with people of all different ages. There's no age segregation like in schools. As far as socialization, my goodness, my kids in the real world, I couldn't even fathom them not being part of connecting with people. And, I think that there is like this kind of bad reputation that's kind of our generation right now. Like a couple of generations ago, or when we were kids, parents, the homeschoolers that most of us knew, did it for religious reasons and a lot of the times, and to keep their kids away from society. So a lot of the times, the forced learning and the forced curriculum and that whole injustice of forcing a child to do things against their will was still a really big part of it, if not more so. And so it's not the same thing at all as living that life. It's quite the opposite. So if you think you understand what homeschooling is because of what you think you know, just don't believe everything you think. Right.
So what about all the fears of illiteracy and not knowing how to add up two numbers and, all that kind of stuff? I know you must hear that a lot from people that you're trying to deprogram.
Yeah, and I totally get it. I'm used to it, and I'm really happy to take the time to answer because I probably would have asked the same thing 30 years ago. I understand. Yeah. Well, reading, writing, and math are all tools. They're just tools to help us get more of what we want in life. And so what human being wouldn't want to learn and use these tools to help them get more of what they want, to learn about and what they want, unless it was forced? Now it's learning that screws everybody up. People have been forced to learn things against their will, not even to learn, but to memorize. And so our connection with these kind of things is that they're tedious and difficult and they're horrible, and phonics and reading, and I'm so bad at math. That's all damage from institutionalized schooling and forced learning that makes you think the way you do. Natural learning, unschooling, is nothing like that. It's a very joy-based existence. All of my kids can read. All of my kids can write. All of my kids use math to whatever degree they need it for. And I could not have kept my children from learning these if I tried. So we live a life rich with resources. Sorry, I have children and animals.
No, it's fine.
And so it's not true that these things are difficult to learn. So, and I think the important thing is to allow freedom. My children have always had freedom with technology, with anything they wanted to look at. I didn't honor books more than I did a computer or any other form of technology for their learning. And we live in a book worshiping culture that's very fearful of technology. And so a lot of the people that I know, a lot of parents coming from like a Waldorf background, for example, are very anti what they call screen time. And that's a real glitch for people coming to this life, because their children are really drawn to learning from this form. But there are so many ways to meet the needs of everybody in the family. I mean, there's you don't have to watch commercials anymore. There's so many wonderful, like what people consider educational programs, everything from the Travel Channel to cooking shows. I mean, my children have been introduced to so much. My son Devin loved Bear Grylls, the survival show. He went on to become a survival teacher in the woods based on his inspiration with him. I mean, my son became a blacksmith because of a program that inspired him on TV. So there's so much to deconditioning, but freedom is really at the base of all of it.
Yeah, exactly. I would think it would change their attitude for later life too, because with the conventional schooling that they're doing, with the forced curricula and attitudes that they're teaching and all that, and I mean, so many things overlap. Like, for example, more and more as they get farther along in the conventional school system up to graduate school and everything, they learn that you're supposed to become very, very specialized in what you know about. Only learn about a really narrow field that you choose. No understanding of the context of it, what it means for the world or anything. And it produces people that step into jobs that, if I had to generalize, they're mostly in some aspect of destroying the world. And they have really good pay and benefits and prestige and everything. And they, in most cases, they don't understand that they're doing any harm. But if you have kids that have a more broad understanding, which I assume radical unschooling kids would have, because they've gone and investigated all kinds of things, they wouldn't be falling into those traps as much. Ending up in a job they hate that they took only for the money or something, and something that was actually causing harm in some way. Wouldn't they be more aware and insulated, immunized against stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, schools, they dumb down kids, but that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is the focus is on obedience more than learning and compliance and conditioning a human to take orders. And so when a child isn't conditioned through 12 years of school, beaten down to take orders, when a child goes through that process, and I can remember, you get used to having a mundane life where pain exists, where suffering exists, and you slip into a job that feels like that much, much easier. You become a yes man, you slip into a job in a cubicle taking orders because that's all you've ever known. Being a free thinker and a self-motivated learner, my God, the healing that I had to go through and the inner work to get to the point to educate myself after that was huge. So a child who's gone through the system is much, much more likely to never question a sad, boring, mundane life that's not fulfilling and not making a difference. I think that's one thing really special that I've seen running conferences for 12 years and seeing hundreds of unschooling kids go from young children onto adulthood and seeing what they've gone on to do. These are human beings that are making a huge difference in this world because they're conscious and they're aware and they know their power and they're very educated in the ways of the earth being destroyed or things being destructive. And why on earth would they ever go from a happy childhood? They're human beings, so there's ups and downs and families go through a lot of different emotions. I'm not saying it's just bliss 24/7, but they have freedom. And with freedom, they're pursuing their passions and they're much more joyful. And so they would never go from extremely joyful, like childhood, pursuing passions to taking a job that makes them miserable just to buy a car and a house. And they would to slip into from joy, satisfaction, respect to misery, obedience and disrespect. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen to kids that have gone through just a normal, healthy life of freedom. So I've never seen that, in fact. So the kids that I know that are now adults with careers are doing things that are very fulfilling and creative and making a difference. So that's
right. And it seems like there would be a big difference in the amount of fear in their life because the obedience training is all based on fear that if you don't obey, something really bad's going to happen. And if you don't allow the experts to make all your decisions for you, that's also going to create some terrible result. Right? Yeah. So there must be a lot less fear in general in kids that way.
Oh, completely. And I think it really comes down to the parents, because a lot of, the approach to traditional education and even traditional curriculum-based homeschooling is constantly preparing children for the future. It's constantly preparing a child for adulthood, and they don't generally have a free childhood. They never really get to be children, and the time they do, it's very, very limited, for 15 minutes at a time. And then when they're home, they need to be doing homework and constant preparation for the future. Well, children are designed just naturally to live in the moment, to live in the now, and they are completely robbed of that from age 3 and 4 once they're in the system. So a child who doesn't have that, who is allowed to have time and freedom, they never lose that ability to live in the now and be mindful. It's part of being human. So why do you think so many of us are doing yoga and we're reading Eckhart Tolle and we're so trying to get back to this natural place that was robbed of us when we were little? And so the reason why we're all trying to get back there is because we know it. We recognize it. We know that we're meant to be there. So that is a huge, huge thing. So my point in sharing that is a future-based existence is generally a fear-based existence. So parents are so fearful that if their kids don't constantly prepare, that they're going to fall behind, or they're not going to get a good job, or all the fears that are used to train and motivate parents to obey and put their child through the system uses to motivate them, because parenting this way wouldn't come natural to them if they weren't put in a fearful state. So it's really the cycle of fear used to control each generation one after the other, until a generation of people rise up like we're doing and say, no more. Right. This is not going to be part of our reality.
I think the fear thing is a big deal, because if you look historically back thousands of years, the people that have tried to control society, to destroy it and dominate it through religion or government or private groups, whatever they were using, they always ended up using fear as their main tool to control everybody, right?
It's a really good tool. It works.
Yeah. And the other thing is this idea of work. Every word has this connotation that you learn to put with it. Work is supposed to be, in education, conventional education, they like to call it a discipline. Don't even think that anything related to it is enjoyable or fun or anything. It's self-imposed misery of some sort, right? Some level, and that makes it worthwhile. And the more complex it is, and the more you don't like what you're doing, the more valuable it is. And it seems like what you're doing in the radical unschooling could actually bring fun and work into the same thing instead of having them as opposites, right?
Look what we're both doing. I mean, look at those. I never knew I could be doing this. How much I love it. I never thought I would have this career. This isn't something that school would have ever prepared me for. I just kept following my instinct and my bliss and my passion and what felt good, and being in that led me here.
Right.
Never imagined I could do this. And so being a midwife and a parenting coach and a conference organizer, and now a conference producer of the biggest anarchist conference in the world, I never would have imagined, nor would I ever have had any kind of training to get me prepared for this. Now, I am not a rarity. This is how people are supposed to live. They find their profession, they're passionate about it, and then they become in service to others. And then just a side effect of that is usually get paid for it. When money's not the goal, but passion and being in service and helping people is, and listening to your instinct and your heart. It's amazing how a side effect is money when you're not expecting that. So all of my children have lived that. All of them, even now, from as young as they can remember. I can remember they've done that. That's what their lives have been. So luckily, they hopefully won't know any different. My son Devin has had a job. He was a tour guide for a wonderful underground cave place, and he worked for the tour company, but he loved it, and that was a choice, and he had the freedom to quit. And so that was something he loved. So it's not that kids that are raised this way won't ever be able to work for anyone else. They just would never work for anybody else unless it was like a true choice, because it was a passion.
Right.
They're not going to be disrespected. They're not just going to go in and be treated like less, than their worth.
They don't have this belief that what you do for money has to be something you hate, and you're just kind of making yourself go through it.
Right, because they never lived that.
Yeah.
You know, never lived that living life, doing things you hate and you have to do to jump through hoops is how you live. And so you see so many people walking around miserable, not realizing that they're free, because they've been free. They don't have to live like that. They're free to be happy, but they just don't know how to do it. And that is the overall intention of why compulsory education started. And so I know it sounds crazy to some people listening maybe, but it's true. And if you read John Taylor Gatto, he writes all about coming down of America and how schools came to be, and the true intention of schools starting in the late 1800s to create good factory workers. Was the intent to keep people down.
And also in Germany or Prussia, good soldiers.
Right, they started
so that they wouldn't object to walking into bullets and dying. I mean, that's really irritating to the bosses when they do that.
Exactly.
So you mentioned anarchy, and it brought up the idea that one of the things you're doing if you're helping to deprogram parents, which I think you mentioned, is redefining what they think words mean. And this word that most people have learned is totally evil, which means if you're an anarchist, the people who are protecting and taking care of you and responsible for you being still alive, which is government, that you're not being respectful to them, and in fact you must be going around blowing up all the government buildings and just being completely berserk. That's not the only definition of anarchy, right? So let's look at that for a minute.
And definition that, I mean, it's what I thought. I remember the first time I heard the term, I think I was on, actually, interestingly enough, Jeff Berwick, my good friend now, he's the one that founded the conference that I'm producing now. I was on his show, and he's like, "You're an anarchist," and I'm like, "I am." I said, "I thought anarchists were all black, and they, threw Molotov cocktails in the street like I saw on TV, And then I think of the band I loved and their song, Anarchy, and it just seemed like an aggressive, intense, pushing up against energy." And he laughed. He said, "No. I'm going to tell you what he is." And it is the most peace and loving based philosophy. It's completely an extension of unschooling, and it's an extension of attachment parenting and natural birth. Like, it's an extension of a natural philosophy. If people were on a deserted island with no cultural influence, anarchy would be the natural state. And so I think the word is kind of like, it's funny because a lot of people don't like the term unschooling because it just has that negative energy around it, and people don't know what it means. And so they'll call themselves natural learners. Well, the same thing is true with the anarchist movement. A lot of people don't like the term and the negative connotation and the history with what people think of as anarchy, so they call themselves voluntarists, and that's also a very acceptable term. But no, anarchy is nothing like you've been conditioned to think it is. It's a very cooperative, freedom-based, love-based, most peaceful philosophy. And when I learned about it, I was like, this is, and the belief that people can self-govern in the same way that I'm not living in an authoritarian paradigm with my children. I'm not forcing them to obey. I'm not punishing them, and we don't live by rules. We live in a partnership-based philosophy. It's the same exact philosophy for now living with other human beings in general and with government, that we don't need to be forced and jailed and imprisoned. The whole idea of self-governing is a really rare one, but it's a really, really important philosophy in the whole history of mankind.
One of the questions that comes up a lot when you're looking at this new definition, which I think is a beautiful vision, actually, that applies to all parts of your life, which is about freedom. So I'm thinking on the practical basis of the nice definition of anarchy, where you don't actually have to blow up all the buildings. Everybody has mutual respect for each other, and they get to do kind of what ideally America was supposed to be in the beginning, which is live however you want, believe and think and say whatever you want, as long as you don't intentionally hurt anybody else in doing it. And so a couple of questions come up with that. One is if your country's right next door to another country that is not exactly being run that way, and they want to come in and invade and kill you, what do you do when everybody's an individual and you don't have any military force or something like that to protect you?
You're asking me this question.
Well, I'm just anybody. Yeah, anybody could think about it. I mean, I just think it's really interesting.
I do find it so interesting. And I think it's because I'm around so many brilliant minds that articulate our anarchy so much better than me. Jeff Berwick, Nathan Freeman, there's so many, Larkin Rose. I mean, there's so many amazing voices for anarchy that are so articulate. I could not even hold a candle to their answers. But I will point you in the direction to look them up.
Okay. And Jeff was on the show just a little while ago.
And Jeffrey Tucker, and there's so many amazing voices who have all mentored me. I'm so grateful to have been mentored.
Okay.
He's brilliant.
And the reason I asked the question and want us to, just be aware that it's something to solve is that I want to make that beautiful vision completely real and integrate it with everybody's everyday life. Because I don't like, I can kind of feel everybody around the planet and what they're going through. And I want them to have a better time. It's really simple. So if there's a way we can bring this more into reality, I'd like to do it.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, I think the way is maybe starting like a lot of people are going to conferences. I went to the first ever Anarcho-Polko 5 years ago, and it was really life-changing. I hadn't met anyone that was living this life, and it all seemed kind of just theoretical. But then I met a lot of people living it, and I realized that I was living it. Like I had been living anarchy from the beginning with my children, and from the beginning since this has been, I think a lot of people can relate. I was a total metalhead growing up. I was kind of a rebel. I hated school. I was kind of already on the fringe and pushing up against society to begin with, so it might have been a little more easier for me to step into this philosophy. But there's people living this life. There's countries. There's a country called Liberland, and they're living in they're completely free. And there's an island right now off the Caribbean, I think, that's being built. They're coming up everywhere, and there's all different societies and conventional communities. And so this is being lived. There's an anarchist group in Anarcho-Polko every year that we have this conference in Acapulco, Mexico. More people stay. There must be hundreds of people there now. So it's just.
You mean they moved to Acapulco because of the conference?
For the conference, and just say I'm staying. I'm not leaving. So is much more free. It's a much more free country, which is something people don't know. And I'll tell you why you don't know this: because our government and our media is so good at keeping it from you. Brilliant.
What they tell you is that the drug gangs in Mexico own and control the government, and if they don't like what you're doing, then they have to come kill you. So that's what everybody is afraid of, I think.
Mexico and Acapulco, Mexico, then Chicago, or New York, 100 million times. I feel so safe when I'm there. The only time there's ever murders, aside from, and even hearing that is probably scary, is between the drug cartel. If you're not in a drug cartel and you're not in the worst part of town and dealing with the drug cartels, you're safe. People love the tourists there. I go downtown myself and to the tattoo shop, and I have friends all over the place. And really, it's a beautiful, free place to live. And traveling all over the world, like I have speaking about this, there's a lot of cultures and countries that are much, much more free than ours. So I would say that if you think America's free, it's really a lot of propagandas because you're told it. You're brainwashed constantly from our national anthem to you're told. Right. Programmed from the moment you're out of that womb, even before, that we're the freest country, that we're free, that we're free. Home of the free and the brave. We are one of the most controlled countries. You are not here. You are not.
Not at all. I try to talk. I told you we have this group that we talk about health information and consciousness information. If I do that beyond a certain line publicly, I may be killed for it, and a lot of doctors have been, and
they really have.
Yeah, 80 or 90 that we know of in the last 2 or 3 years in this country, and that's just for mentioning a tiny bit of it. When you want to talk about the whole thing, which is, I think, what's the point of doing anything less than that? Then it's just you realize you're risking your life to do that, but you can't do anything less if you know about it and people need the information. But the people that want you not to spread that, they're government agents and agency personnel and industry personnel from the drug companies and everything. So it's true. But why don't you tell us what is Anarcho-Polko, anything that you know about how it started and what actually happens there, the times that you've gone and stuff like that.
Well, Anarcho-Polko started off as a smaller event. There was a couple hundred people at the first one, and it was wonderful. I think I was the only one there speaking about anything to do with what I was speaking about. I turned on a lot of people to the unschooling philosophy. I remember that first year that I spoke. It was primarily men. It was a lot of men in the audience, and they were all crying. Yeah, I found this sharing about birth and schooling and what it means. And I think a lot of people felt really validated for the first time, because I was finally validating what they knew all along, because people know that they're not free, and they know that it's abusive to control and to be punished and threatened and everything that we went through in our culture. So it was kind of an introduction, I think, to the movement, and the more on different anarchist shows and voices that supported what I was doing, the more it spread. But every year it grew more and more and more. And every year I've been doing a family camp. It was small in the beginning. A family camp is where I invite families to come and I educate them about unschooling, and we have a whole day workshop, and then we go on a nice tour. Well, I was asked last year to join, with the support of some wonderful people that believed in me, to join Anarcho-capitalism as a producer of the event, because the event grew so much, especially last year. So we had it at this hotel, and 1,500 people came, and it blew our minds. It was just enormous, and we had so many. Ron Paul spoke, and a lot of kind of big names. We had some wonderful musical performances and activities. Well, this year it's like a full professional production. So there's a whole production crew. I'm the community producer. I'm in charge of all the places on the property to make them really community focused. So, the anarchist movement, the anarchist community is as diverse as any community. It's huge, and there's so many different types of anarchists, just like there are different types of people. We all have different interests and strengths and what we're into, and so we're offering everything from art and creativity to surf classes to a whole musical series, which is going to be mind-blowing, to the whole social aspect of it. But then we have a lot of different workshops. So we have a health and wellness track with all about healthy eating, and a lot of really alternative medicine approaches, and yoga and ecstatic dance. I mean, we're covering a huge range of everything from really intellectual, and we have a lot of intellectual speakers who are amazing voices in this movement. So you have that whole need met. There's anarcho-capitalists. There's a huge cryptocurrency scene. So Bitcoin is a sponsor. We have a lot of different just things that are really edgy and radical. But if you're drawn to it and you come to it, you're going to be introduced to so much you never knew was there, and so much that you know in your heart, deep down, it just makes sense. Have you ever heard anything, Richard, and you're just like, there's something inside you that you knew this, like you knew this song on some level, whether you're tapping into your cells from like past generations, or whether it was something you knew when you were a child that was conditioned out of you. When you walk in, when you enter Anarcho-capitalism property, and this year we bought out a 5-star resort called the Princess Hotel. We literally bought it out for our event. We have 3,000 people expected. You walk in and you know you're home. There's something about it where you're like, this is my tribe. Like, I'm here. Wow. And truly, that's what it's going to be this year. So I'm so honored and excited and completely blown away that I can produce this event with a wonderful team of people who are just as passionate as I am. But I think I bring in a unique perspective, because the professional producers we have are amazing, and they're teaching me so much. And for me to produce the whole community component, it's great. But I'm kind of like the more, I think, naturally minded, the unschooling. I'm a vegan. Like, I kind of bring in this whole different track that a lot of people are drawn to and interested in. Yeah. So there's like the hippie side of anarchists and unschoolers, all the way to the anarcho-capitalists, to everybody in between. Yeah, and so it's a huge, vast community. So is there still time for people to come to it if they want to, or is it close to being sold out, or what's the situation? We're probably halfway, if not more. We're going to be sold out really quick. So there's time still, definitely, yeah, but I would definitely book your hotel. So the hotel rooms are going to go really quick on the property. There'll be hotels in the city, but being on the property, if you've ever been to a conference that's at a hotel, you really want to be at the hotel to take in the action, because we have activities going on until 4 a.m. Yeah. So if you want to get in, the rates are wonderful there. So Mexico is like super, super cheap. Everything's like way cheaper than it is here. And so you can go there and you eat wonderfully. Then we have all kinds of food that'll be on property, vegan food, vegetarian food, regular, all kinds of Mexican food, obviously, and it's authentic and wonderful. So anyway, so you can still go. Yes, you can buy it. So how expensive is the conference, and how expensive is the hotel? I think the hotel may be around like $150 a night. Depends, because there's so many different types of rooms. Okay. Actually, I think it's $500 for like all 4 nights. For the hotel or for the conference? For the hotel. Okay. hotel. The conference, we did have an early bird rate for a while, but I believe that's over. I can look that up right now. So if you go to anarcho.com, you can look up all the details.
Okay.
Just don't want to give you the wrong price. Let me just look it up real quick.
Yeah, I think people would be interested to know about that.
We have a brand new website. Oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. I haven't been there since we've redone it. It's gorgeous.
That's the Anarcho.com, right?
.com. So it's February 14th, Valentine's Day, to the 17th.
To 17th, okay.
Yeah, but it's interesting because people come down for like a week or 2 weeks or even a month or a couple months. So there's things going on. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Coachella or any of the larger events, Burning Man. We're kind of like a Burning Man style event. It's a festival. So we have installation art pieces. We have all kinds of really cool things happening. But a lot of people stay before and after. So the conference itself is during that time. But there's other events. There's the Dollar Vigilante event, which runs the Dollar Vigilante. I think they're doing that before Anarcho-Poco. But all the information's on the website. So I'm looking right now at the tickets and how much they are.
Okay.
We're like half sold out, and we sold out last year, and we will sell out this year.
Well, you said there's a limit of about 3,000 people can fit in the hotel, right?
Oh, on the property or anything we're doing. So we want the experience to be amazing for the people that are there. So even though probably 4,000 or 5,000 people or more would want to come, we're cut off at 3,000 because that is what we can give people an amazing experience is at that limit. So everything we're based. So tickets are $445 each.
Okay.
So are free, which is amazing, and I'll tell you why. And that's kind of actually a really like one of a kind thing for an event like this because I've designed and I'm producing an entire kind of wing of the hotel called the Freer Family Camp, and we have 5 or 6 rooms just filled. We have speakers, we have computer labs, we have a craft area, we have people coming, dress up room, like a huge like village essentially for kids and families to learn and grow from in this space. So that for kids is free. You can come, and so if it's parent with a family, it's a very, very affordable vacation, it's something that'll change your life forever.
Right. Now, during those 4 days, if you've got 3,000 people there, I'm assuming there's a lot of things going on simultaneously, so you have to keep choosing which ones you want to go to, right?
Yeah, there is actually this year. We didn't really do that in the past, but we need to this year with the amount of people and the amount of content and the amount of people being involved.
Yeah.
So, no, but there's certain things that don't overlap. Like there's a lot of community type of things that are happening at night. So our program, like our main stage presentations, I believe they're going to be over at like 7. And so our health and wellness is going to be around that time that it ends. But at 7 at night is when we really kick in a lot of the community building events. And there's going to be many different community spaces to hang out in during that time. So the more structured talks and more structured events will be ending at around a certain time. But then from 7 at night until 4 in the morning, there's really open-ended, wonderful, amazing experiences. So
what's a community building event? What would be examples of that?
Okay, well, I mean, there's everything from bands to dancing to, scheduled family sandcastle building contests, and there's different events in the swimming pool. We have a nude pool this year, which is just kind of a place for people that want to experience what it's like to be nudist or more free, open and free with that kind of perspective. We have a hookah lounge. We have the whole, like I said, the whole children's wing is open all the time for things going on. There's a lot I really can't reveal.
Okay, that's all right.
But let me just tell you a few more just briefly, because I know that we're having like collaborative art pieces. So we have art pieces all over the property where people will hang out. We have a potential, we have different potentially a skate park, basketball, like there's a lot of different fun things, surf camp. Just you're in like a tropical paradise. You're literally in paradise hanging out with all these free-minded, open-minded, incredible people at a resort that's really cheap, and there's all kinds of amazing things. So we're also partnered with a tour company. So we have a tour company that's offering everything from scuba diving and snorkeling to tours of Acapulco to going to see the divers. We're releasing baby sea turtles one night as a means to give back to the environment's really important to people in Mexico with the sea turtles. So we've organized that for our group to do together to release baby sea turtles as a really wonderful experience. So yeah, there's a lot, my goodness, but I can't tell you anymore. The big stuff I haven't even told you actually, because right. At some point before the conference, are those things going to be talked about? Okay. Yeah, but they're kind of big, and we have to wait, and everything needs to be timed for something like this to ensure everything's going to flow perfectly. So I'm sworn to secrecy.
Okay, good. So if they stay in touch with your website, that's the way to know when things get announced, right?
Anarcho-capitalism.com. We have a Facebook group. There's like a few different groups on Facebook. I would join one of those. Just get yourself in the loop. There's an email list. Just go to anarcho-capitalism.com, sign up for that, and just write to me. If you can't find it, write to me. I'll point you in the right direction.
Dayna L. Martin at gmail.com, right? Okay.
Yes. Or go through my website, martin.com, and just email me through there.
You're still at the point where you can keep up with emails pretty much.
Well, I have an assistant, luckily.
Okay, good.
They've grown really big. They really have. But I also run a group on Facebook that's really active, and so I do what I can do. And I don't know how I do it all. I just kind of wake up and I try to be in the moment. I do yoga. I do yoga every day.
Right. Good.
And so luckily I have a huge team of people that love and support my vision and what I'm doing. So I have help. Right.
Good. Excellent. So I would think that if you're doing, you call it coaching, I guess, kind of counseling for parents mostly.
Yep.
Right. About the unschooling, but then it would bring up all kinds of other issues, because once they really start to grasp the spirit of unschooling, radical unschooling especially, the way you defined it, it goes into every part of their life, and they start probably looking at their life at some point more and more in detail, and they say, wait a minute, I'm doing 90+% of my day every day stuff that doesn't go with this at all. So how do I change that all over so that it's all integrated? Am I correct that would come up a lot in some form?
Oh, yeah. It's so interesting. Once you start becoming free in some areas of your life, it does naturally spill outward. You begin to question everything. And it's a process in life that never ends. That's one thing, I'm not an expert because I'm constantly learning and learning. I'm happy to help people and support people with what I know. But the older I get and the more I release, the less I realize I know. And so,
exactly.
It's this mindset of I want to be more and more free. And so to me, I think our own evolution happens when we take that first step into freedom, because we're listening to our instinct and we're saying, I'm going to be free in this area, whether it's educating yourself about health and nutrition and learning how the food in our culture is not real food, and how manipulated people are. When you learn about health and learn that pills and medicating somebody and keeping them sick is not health. And so what happens is you begin to wake up, all these lights start going off, and you're waking up here and you're waking up there. And when you embrace it and you step into that evolution, you are on a train that doesn't stop. It never stops. But it feels good, doesn't it? It feels good. You get upset and angry, and you're like, well, I didn't know this was a thing. And then you learn and you grow and you empower, and then you help other people. And so I think evolution and waking up is part of our purpose as human beings. And when you are living that, you are fulfilled and you are happy. And you may have to do a lot of inner work, and there's going to be times that are super low. You have to cry and release and make choices you don't want to make. But in the end, you're finally stepping into truth. And so, for me, learning how to live truthfully and honestly and authentically has been really hard, because we're in a culture that does not live that way. And so being honest with myself has been the biggest journey. But
well, one of the things that I think has been engineered this way is that the money system is being manipulated in such a way that not only do people, most of them, have to do things they don't like, just getting through the time until they can get off at the end of the day and, go do something else. But the fact that they have to do that, and more both parents have to do it, they're not even around their kids. And part of radical unschooling is to be able to share some time with your kids while they're learning everything, right?
Yeah, definitely. And especially when they're younger. As they've gotten older too, but more so when they're younger. I look back on 15 years of just making myself slow down and be present. And that's one of the most important things with parenting this way. Peaceful parenting and radical unschooling is your presence with your child. We live in a culture that uses rules and punishments, and rules are a replacement for being present, and they don't work. They're cruel, and they only teach children to jump through hoops and to learn how to get around things for their own freedom. And being present and sitting with your child and really tuning in, listening to them and talking and having discussions, that's a really, really different way to live than most people are taught to live. So, yeah, being with your kids and being present is a huge part of this life. And I know a lot of people that are masters at it that I learned from every day. You know, I know a lot of other people who inspire me and say, I sat and listened to my daughter tell me about One Direction for 2 hours today. She was in her bliss sharing about it and telling me about it. And I was there and I was in it. I was into it. I wasn't just pretending to listen to jump through hoops. I was there. And so this is something that's really kind of a pioneering way of being, which is really strange, isn't it? But
yeah,
when you think about the fact that we learn best when we're educating other people and when we're telling other people about our passions, like you and I are right now with your audience.
I mean, you can listen to yourself and learn from it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this stuff is just we didn't script this. So where it's coming from is a really interesting question. But you get in a certain mindset and it just comes through. And then you realize, oh, wow, what did I just say? Maybe I should actually do that. You know, and it's teaching us as fast as anybody, I think.
Completely. And so that same concept is true with all human beings and children. So when you provide a forum for children to do what we're doing right now and to talk and tap into that passionate flow and where is this coming from, we need to do that as human beings. And children don't have that luxury. They can't learn to the next level. It's hard for them to evolve in our culture because there's no one holding space for that. So a big part schooling really is listening and being present. And it's hard. Our minds as moms, like I can remember sitting there going, okay, I need to stay here. Then I'm going dishes and dinner and I need to do this and I have to do this to just silence your mind to be enough to be present with somebody you love.
Yeah. And a lot of fathers and increasing numbers of mothers aren't even home. So it's kind of like, in the hospital, they take your baby away and the experts do things to him you don't need to know about. You're just the mother, right? And that's the same thing is done to you by the job that you hate. Yeah, it's not taking the baby away, but it's taking the parent away.
And the children, they're separate, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we need to integrate this with the whole system of what people do for a living. Because I would think that a lot of the people you coach will say, well, that's really a great idea, you know, but I have to go to work for 8 or 9 hours and do the stuff that I don't like, and I have no contact with my kid.
You know, and the interesting thing is what you're saying. I coach people on surprisingly, I didn't expect to, again, something I never expected to, but on making money off of their passions.
Yeah.
And I supported a woman not too long ago who was really nervous to speak out and live her passion because it was something kind of controversial. And I supported her for a lot of months. I coached her for maybe 6 months to a year. And she now is the most renowned in her entire field and has been in magazines and is on TV. And she, because all I did was tell her, and it really wasn't that amazing or anything. It was just, I was a voice that she knew was true that said, don't be afraid. You need to speak your truth. It's your calling. And when you do, the universe will open up opportunities that you never knew existed. And so truly, this is about educating and supporting and inspiring people to live their passions and live their calling, because we all have one.
Well, what did she end up doing?
Oh, she's amazing. So she runs cannabis. Well, she did have a edibles shop, and now she does something called the Ganja Goddess Getaways. And so she inspires women who use medical marijuana and marijuana in their lives in various forms to be supported through that. And she educates people about it. And she was in High Times Magazine. I mean, she's a really renowned woman in her field. And I'm really proud of her. Her name is Deirdre. And she's an amazing unschooling mother and a good friend of mine. So she's somebody who I remember encouraging to do what I'm doing, but in her own field. And so there's been many other people, whether it's birth workers. I mean, of course, that's a little, on the radical side, what she's doing. Not everybody would, that would be in their realm of desire, but everything from writers to people doing crafts. And really what I do for people is the same thing I do for them in birth as a doula, is I just remind them that they can do it. I'm not giving a script or something. I'm just reminding them that they know it's there. You have to tap into it. Like, trust me, you know the answer. And I'm here to remind you that not to give up.
Isn't part of that just relaxing at a certain level internally?
For birth?
No, for letting yourself, well, birth too, but for letting yourself do in your life what you would like to do, because you're relaxing all these self-imposed limitations and beliefs that's impossible.
Yeah, yeah. And just like connecting, honestly, having support, we're meant to support each other.
Yeah.
Create a network of supportive people to remind you how amazing you are. Even I forget that sometimes, because, when you're in a role of leadership and you're helping people, you sometimes forget that to be vulnerable. You don't really want to be seen as vulnerable necessarily, and that you need help sometimes. But in the last couple of years, especially this last year, I've really tapped into that truth, and I'll reach out to somebody and say, I am so needing to be reminded of of my greatness, or that I'm doing the right thing, and they bring it back up. So inspiring other people through just support and being vulnerable and real, and kind of owning when you're feeling shame or guilt, and it's just owning your humanness in a real way, when our culture just wants you to hide everything. We're supposed, even like, I think about like my Instagram sometimes, for example, because we all post our best pictures, our happiest, our most productive. Here's my wonderful food dish of what I made. And I never want people to come away thinking that I'm something that they couldn't aspire to, because if you were in my house right now, you totally would get it. You'd be like, oh, okay, she's not she's a pile of dishes. I have emails that aren't answered. I don't even know if I showered today. I honestly don't remember. I think I did yesterday. I've been rushing kids where I'm real, just like everybody on Instagram is, or anyone in social media. Like, we're all just sharing like a photo album, like our best photos, but that's like 1/10 of who we are. So never compare yourself as a mother, as a woman, as a father to anybody that you're seeing and think that you're less than. So we live in a culture that really breeds low self-esteem and comparison and competition. Competition, all of that kind of thing is exactly what our culture wants you to be in the mindset of, to be stayed in fear and keep you kind of down. When you connect with people who are real and honest and call you out and challenge you and encourage you that you can do more and be more, what we all need, it's what we naturally need as human beings.
Yeah, it feels really good. And I think that it would start changing things around us a lot faster too. Yes. Because when we start dropping all of the self-imposed limitations and beliefs that we can't do what we want and things like that, it's impractical, and you have to be stressed and worried all the time, or else you're not a responsible person, because there's so much going on around you that is challenging, that if you were relaxed and felt good, there's something wrong with you. I mean, it's a real basic belief system.
Yep.
So you're helping people to change that for something else.
Yeah, just because it was done for me. It's the same thing that women have been doing for generations, centuries, and a millennial, for helping women birth. We've helped each other birth, and it's not supposed to end there. We help each other through life, through parenting. We're meant to like raise each other's kids in a tribe, and if you can't have that physically, you need to create that for yourself through online resources and other ways. But it's only you that can do it. No one's going to come to you.
Right, unless you become something different, and then they do come to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can build it and they will come. That's a really important thing. There was no unschooling conferences or resources for unschooling families that I designed for my family years ago. And I decided, I'm going to have an unschooling conference. I'm going to start one. And I did. And over the years, hundreds of families came. So even if it's something, I'm just using unschooling as an example, but having an unschooling support group once a month at your local library, and start putting it out there if you need support, if there's nobody around. If there is a community, you can create one for yourself. Yeah,
that's another thing, is that people don't know how to, contact other people in like, suppose there's a target audience that a person wants to get in touch with who has similar interests and things like that, but they don't have a big advertising budget or anything. How do you think they should do that? Like, maybe they think there's 1,000 people that would relate to what they want to do, but they're not the general public necessarily. And they have to find those pinpointed individuals and get in touch with them. How would they do that, do you think, in general?
I mean, there's so many resources now online. There's like gotomeetings.com. There's like meetup groups that you can go to online, and then like post that you're meeting in a park, or joining forums. I mean, I really think Facebook groups are a great way for people to connect. A lot of people have a Facebook group, and then they have different resources for people that want to start something in real life. But Facebook has been a wonderful way for me to facilitate my children's passions and interests and things. My daughter Ivy, who's 13, is a huge animal advocate, and so I did some research and found out that there's a group an hour away called Anonymous for the Voiceless that does they meet up and educate people about factory farming. So with the internet, it's almost impossible not to find your tribe, but it does take a little work and finding the right, the right fit for you. Because sometimes, sorry, there's so many people having fun and screaming around me.
Yeah, that's good.
My 16-year-old daughter's room is like right on the other side of this wall. Already I knocked because I could hear her so loud. And she yelled back. I don't know if you heard. She's like, "What?"
No, I did. I missed that.
Anyway, okay. Yeah, but if it's somebody who's interested, again, reach out to me and ask me if there's anybody that they know of in their area, because we have a Facebook group this is for unschooling, because that's the topic of this talk, but Unschoolers Seek is the name of the unschooling group. And Unschoolers Seek, you type in your state and you get a state and city potentially, and you get everybody in your area that is living this life. So that's one way you can connect with people.
That's a neat idea. The other thing I noticed in what you were describing is that you're really talking about changing archetypes that people have as their models, especially kids, that they can emulate. Like in the conventional Hollywood entertainment, it's whoever can kill everybody else the fastest. Those are the best heroes. They all carry machine guns and stuff, and all the. I mean, this is not new. I was watching Bonanza when I was a little kid every week and thought it was great. And the Cartwrights were the big heroes because you knew that they'd eventually just shoot everybody else and everything would be great. So there's other kinds of heroes that people could start to learn about, right? That are not necessarily just the fastest killers. There are other ideals that could be out there.
You wouldn't believe. You just reminded me. So we had at my last conference, we had this wonderful couple. They're in their band called True Universal. Their name is Mike and Nicole, and they're this wonderful young couple. They don't have kids yet, but their entire 2-hour presentation was on what it means to be a hero.
Yeah.
Why did they turn that on its head? It gives me goosebumps how they showed what being a true hero is, and exactly what you're saying, the history of what we've been led to believe is a hero. And don't think for a second that we weren't conditioned to think that heroes are killers because we're in the business of war. And so there's a reason why you're to think this way. And
social chaos on an individual level too, because then you're more controllable.
Completely, 100%. And so to learn what a true hero is, I think there's also a wonderful documentary. I think it's on Gaia.com, GAIA, and it's called Hero. And so it's about that. So that's another thing to decondition from, isn't it? And to evolve, to break down and unlearn and then relearn the truth of.
Yeah, I mean, the kids are really subconsciously trying to pattern themselves after whoever the official heroes are. And they're mostly people who are the best at violence. And even the women now are joining the men with true equality. They're both being just as horrible. And the women... even if they're young and in great shape and look good, and they usually have a machine gun. And if you disagree with them, they don't really have a discussion with you. They mostly just shoot you and move on to the next challenge, And it seems like there's whole new sets of hero archetypes that is part of the job of everybody to be creating those, seems to me.
Yeah. See, I'm just, as you're talking, I'm thinking, because this isn't something I've spent hours and hours thinking about, but now that you're saying it, I'm so curious. I actually want to go downstairs and sit at the kitchen table with my kids and say, okay, what do you think a hero is?
Yeah, exactly.
Or with a group of friends. It'd be such a wonderful discussion over dinner.
It would be pretty interesting. I mean, even the religious heroes are usually the best killers. It's always for God, right? But they killed the most people the fastest, and they're really a good hero if it only took them 100 men to kill 1 million. That's really great.
It's so true. And when I'm thinking about why are we here? What's our sole purpose? Well, it's love. It's the absolute opposite of that.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean kill all the bad guys first, which could be everybody who disagrees with you, and then have love for the ones that are left.
This is true, and we're meant to love each other. And that's where the whole anarchist component comes in for me, because I didn't realize what a love and peace-based philosophy that it was until I really started learning about it, because it's the opposite of that. It's the opposite of killing to be a hero. So, very interesting. My kitty hasn't been home for a while, so she's outside calling her.
Oh, neat. Yeah, you have good natural sound effects.
Oh, good. As long as you don't mind.
So what are the, your visions of the future and what direction you'd like to go in? And how much awareness do you let yourself have of what's going on in the outside world, and how do you respond to that? What do you want to contribute to it?
You know, it's interesting. I don't watch the news myself, and I really don't pay attention. But I have good friends that do, because it's their job and what they write about and their voices for liberty. And so a lot of times I'll tune into, I turn into alternative media choices. The alternative media is truthfully like my most powerful source to what's really happening. One of which is We Are Change. Luke Rudowski, he's an amazing pioneer at sharing the truth. So sources like that. So when I do learn about what's going out there, sometimes you'll just hear it, because it's Facebook usually. Like I had no clue what was going on with the thing with Nike at all. I was actually in Nike with my daughter who wanted to get a new pair of pants. When I heard about it, I'm like, what's going on with the whole Nike? And I still don't even fully understand it, but having to do with somebody not kneeling during the anthem or something. And so I'll hear about a little niblet or something, and then go on and research like the cultural idea and what's being told by the media, and then I'll dig deeper and I'll go to the alternative media sources to get a good balanced approach to what it is if I'm interested. You know, most of the time everybody's just talking about the awful things happening, and I really just want to focus on the good happening in the world. And so I'll shut my computer off and I'll do yoga. Yeah, good. I'll tap into infinite source wisdom, but kids for me, and I get little glimpses of it.
So what are you thinking about, logistical plans for how the work expands into the future, or you want to just like moment to moment let it develop like a radical unschooling idea?
Yeah, okay. So my work, I have great visions that continually expand. I never ever stop. I want to go to Asia and promote it. There's places in the world, I think, that are kind of waking up at different paces, and I really feel it. I tune into it based on who's contacting me, and right now in China, for example, in Asia, there's a huge awakening for this type of thing, and so I've been contacted, and so I'm focused on whoever needs me and so forth. So everything's just been a natural momentum for me. Like I've never planned any of it. It just keeps happening. If I keep following my bliss and keep doing exactly what we're doing right now, and I say yes to every single opportunity of people that want to hear my message, the road keeps being put down in front of me. So my only goal is to never lose this humility, I guess, and never thinking that I'm anything more than just like a voice to conduct this message.
So there's a certain consciousness that you have to stay tuned into, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
And then everything else just happens.
It happens, and it's kind of a weird thing I'm not telling other people that they need to do that. I don't really know how it happens, but I have vision boards. Those are important to me. So I have goals for my own personal expansion and joy, and it always includes advocating for this. That's what I love to do. So usually I'll have my own personal goals, but a lot of it involves, taking these opportunities and growing as a person and learning new things and trusting that everything will always work out. And so maybe it's a really faith, hope-based approach, but it really works for me. So trying to stay in a good mental mindset, surrounding myself with loving, wonderful people that care about me and that I support and help. So that's not a good answer, probably. No one's really ever asked me that. Isn't that so funny? Like, what's your hope for the future? Maybe, oh my goodness, maybe I've achieved like ultimate mindfulness if I haven't thought about the future.
Yeah, because actually the future never happens. Yeah. The present just keeps evolving, right?
Yeah. I mean, I know what I'm doing like a year or two from now. Like my goal is to make Anarcho-capitalism right now like the best conference that anyone's ever seen, and for people to feel absolutely loved. My goal is for every single person in that space to feel loved. So much of my creative energy, and that might sound really weird, but that's why people go to events like this. We want to feel like we belong, we matter, and that we're loved. And so that is the energy that I'm constantly cultivating when I'm writing, when I'm proposing, when I'm crunching numbers, when I'm working with a team. So that's an important thing. So I think we reach a lot of people at an event like that. But then, writing my next book is something I really want to do. I have so many books in my head. And I'm still in the trenches of day-to-day life with a lot of children whose learning I'm facilitating every single day. Right. And cleaning the house. And
well, when you say a lot of children you're facilitating, are you talking about your own kids primarily?
My own kids, and then the coaching I do at night for other people's kids, and then best friends and their kids. So I'm just realizing as I'm telling you this how blessed I am, like at a deeper level. I'm so grateful that I get to do what I'm doing. And if anyone's listening to this that wishes they could live like this kind of life where they're living their passions, you can. If I can do it, you can do it. Trust me. And if you need support getting there, you'll create your own blissful life based on what you love to do. So that's what we're here for, to support you in this.
Yeah, I think that's a great bottom line message, because it's the spirit that's behind everything else. Yes. It's this idea that life has to be self-imposed suffering to be responsible and worthwhile. Right. That's not exactly accurate. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite. It makes me think, again, of this experience of, we went to the mountains and a lake when I was a little kid for vacation every summer for a couple of weeks. And that was great, except I always knew that very soon at the end of the 2 weeks, we'd have to go back to what was normal life, where nobody liked what they were doing. And it was really symbolic, because we drove back into this valley. It was in California, Central Valley, and it was full of this brown smog, which everybody considered the normal air. And, then you had to wait another 50 weeks before you could go to vacation again. And I felt like there was a lot wrong with that paradigm. It should be the whole time being really happy and excited about what you're doing. And that's work. It's not self-imposed suffering. It's like changing the archetypes, right? It's changing the ideal pattern of what every day should be like.
Oh, completely. And people have a harder time with that than they think. Like, they might say to themselves, oh, I wish I could live that. And boy, would I love to be free and be happy and be doing what I love. But you're given the opportunity, because we all are. You could do that, but it's hard.
But they don't see the opportunities.
Exactly.
It's like the boss calls, and when are you going to be back at work? And, I really want you to be worried about this overnight and stuff like that. And, they think, well, what opportunity is that?
It's so true, but it takes like people, like a whole community, a whole village of people like us that are supporting other people, saying, if we can do it, you can do it. We're no different than you. We're human like you. We went through the same types of things you did, the same suffering and pain and traditional education and punishments, and all we've all had issues. But I think it takes hearing that other people are doing it. Like, once people know it exists, once you raise your consciousness enough to know something exists, there's something in you that grows. So I think just speaking out and saying, this exists, radical unschooling exists, and here's what it is. Anarchy exists, it's not what you think, but here's what it is. And then people are like, wow, I never knew about this, and wow, this is becoming more and more possible. And even if a little bit of their lives becomes more free, even the tiniest bit because of my influence, done my job, because I know that once that one switch is turned on of freedom, the others just want so much to come out. It's
what they used to call a chain reaction.
Yes,
that starts, right? And then it gets faster and faster.
Completely.
Well, this is really fun. I mean, this is an example of that work, right? This exchanging these ideas that there's all these visions in it of super exciting discovery, everything, filling your whole life. And so what I'd like to do is, if it's okay with you and if you get time, before Anarcho happens, at a appropriate time, get an update and see what you've done to put it together as that incredible experience, and kind of hear about what's happening.
Yeah, great. I'd be so happy to.
Yeah, I think it would be fun. What'd you say? I couldn't hear you.
I said you should think of coming.
Yeah, I have considered it. I mean, it might be a really good idea.
You could bring your whole show down there, and you could live stream from the event. A lot of people do that.
Yeah, because I have to keep the broadcast going and everything. But it sounds like it would be an incredible experience. And it reminds me of when I was first in the university as a student, which was in the mid-'60s, that it was different environment than the conventional universities are now, where there's so many, people going insane and stuff, and the professors doing all these violent activities. But the professors used to go outside with us in the kind of a square between these different campus buildings and sit out there, really late at night, thinking about what can we contribute to make the world better. And they really meant it. And that's, and starting with ourselves, and each other. And it was incredible. And I thought, that would be nice to have everywhere. And it sounds like with places like Anarcho and what you're trying to spread, that there's no reason that couldn't be everywhere.
It's true, and that's one of the intentions. Actually, this year we talked about that at our last meeting on how we want to empower people to take home instead of leaving there and saying, okay, I'm leaving all of this and I can't wait to come back next year.
Yeah, like the vacation driving down into the smog again, right?
Exactly. And even though people are living more freedom-based lives oftentimes that are coming to something like this, they're still not fully where they want to be, or they're not fully, I think where a lot of us want to be is around a lot of other people who are awake, that you don't have to explain yourself to all the time. And whether it's about medical or birth or alternative or being vegan or eating naturally or unschooling, like where I'm a happy, joyful person and I'm really happy and I don't get offended easy and I talk to people about it all the time. But it's so nice to be in a community like at Anarcho and people just get you. They just love who you are, and you're not constantly having to explain, and this is what I do and this is what my children do. You're just you. And so you're accepted. So it's a great place for alternative minds. And don't think that you have to think this radical to go. My goodness, you certainly don't. You could be somebody that's working for somebody else and just really curious about this other type of life. But
Right. You just have to want to meet some actual other human beings that are, not holding you away at arm's length.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did we miss and that you want to say as parting words until we talk some more?
I think I just want to share a couple of thoughts about children, because that's where my passion is. Being a voice for children is really, really important to me. And honestly, that's how everything started for me, was being a voice for my son when he was a baby. And he was communicating with me that he didn't want to be left to cry and that he wanted to eat when he wanted to eat. I was his voice to say, he's telling me what his needs are, and I trust him. Our culture wants to assume negative intent from children. Negative intent was assumed from us. Negative intent was assumed at the hospital when the nurses said, if you pick him up too much, and when my mother-in-law said, if you pick him up too much, he will manipulate you. And I'm thinking, what on earth is this little newborn even comprehending that he's going to manipulate me? And I knew how crazy that was. And so that actually was the beginning of really got me thinking of, wow, I live in a really strange reality that people think that children are meaning to do negative, to manipulate other people. And so it's this weird culture of paranoia, assuming negative intent, and focusing on behavior modification above the children's needs. Mm-hmm. So they assume positive intent from children, assume that they're doing the very best they can with what they know at the time, and it will change so much of your perception. Don't focus on a child's behavior. In fact, don't focus on anybody's behavior. Instead, focus on the needs under the behavior. And when you focus on that, and that matters, and you care about that, and you help a child get what they want in life, when you're not the wall standing between your child and their desires, and instead you're the one helping them get what they want, trust is built, connection is built, love is amazing, always growing and getting deeper and deeper. This type of parenting and way of being with children, and not only children but other human beings, is a very higher consciousness way of connecting with other people. And it's something that you're programmed to do. You know all of this, and you will know when you start doing it that it's truth, because you knew it when you were little, you knew it when you were a baby, and you knew it when you were 2, and you knew it when you were 4, how unjust somebody only focusing on your behavior was, and that nobody cared about your needs. You couldn't articulate it, but you knew something was really off, and it may have been silenced for a lot of years, but I'm here to say you were right. You were right the whole time. You were right, what your instinct told you. So I would say it's time to start treating children the way that you wish you were treated and the way that you should have been treated. And in doing so, you'll heal yourself, you'll heal your family, and you'll then in turn heal the world.
I totally agree. That's a beautiful explanation. And it sounds to me like what you're talking about is replacing justice with unconditional love. Because the justice paradigm would be, well, my parents beat me up, so, I'm going to keep it going. And the other one says, I don't care what happened to me. It doesn't matter. I'm going to give the best I've got unconditionally to the kids and the other people in my life and see what comes back from that.
And totally. And understanding too, extending what I just shared even further, knowing that, and I know not everybody can get to this mental space because some people have a lot more abuse and pain in their past, but your parents did the best they could with what they knew.
Right. They were victims too. I mean, that's why they had problems.
And most of the time when people criticize me, well, almost, so much, or they're kind of in a place of not really accepting what I'm advocating, it's because if what I'm saying is true, it means that they never had to go through everything that they went through and were told that it was completely necessary because they were loved. I'm doing this because I love you. And then you were culturally trained to assume that if a parent wasn't hitting their child, then they didn't love them. If a parent gave them freedom, they couldn't have loved him because they were told, I'm controlling you and punishing you and hurting you because I love you. And that really messes up the human mind.
I hear that constantly, especially for the men. You're not a good father if you don't beat up your kid when they're really disobeying.
And what it really is about, the sad thing is, their inner child, man, if they accept that there's another way, oh my God, that means to accept that they really were abused.
Right.
Really, really heavy burden. And then, oh my God, their parents hurt them instead of love them. And it is so overwhelmingly so much bigger than us in this conversation to talk about the deep emotional pain that comes with acceptance of another way. So,
I mean, that same thing is with medical doctors who try to understand that you don't need to eat toxic chemicals to be healthy or to inject them into your body. If they ever let themselves consider that, well, maybe they just got a $600,000 student loan for something that was wrong.
Oh, yeah, totally. And so maybe it is an overall interesting dynamic with a lot of things in our lives. Like I always compare every scenario to birth somehow. It's kind of a joke with my family and friends that I always say, oh, this is a lot like labor, a certain life. And they're like, oh my God, my kids are like, oh my God, let me guess, Mom, it's a lot like labor. But like birth and labor really is this wonderful.
But what if it is? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think the same thing is with what we're talking about, that it really is kind of this dynamic of, it's huge for people to swallow that there's an alternative, because in their minds, it means they didn't have to go through what they went through, and they want to truly believe it was the best thing. They want to believe, they don't want to face that things could have been better, because then they feel pain. So when people criticize it or they get reactive, I know that. I know it takes a really, really, really strong, confident person to grow to the point of accepting. And especially parents who have done things differently. A lot of times when I work with a lot of parents who have gone from spanking and forcing and doing all these things, and to hear there's another way, and to hear them cry in their pain of expressing themselves that they never wanted to do any of that. They knew it was wrong. They felt so wrong in their being. But again, our culture trains us to think that it has to hurt to be a parent.
And all good things are uncomfortable, unpleasant, and they require force.
That is huge, isn't it? That is the overall thing, that everything we've talked about, everything that we've covered tonight, that's the overall basic thing. And we are here doing this live stream, educating and supporting people and to tell them that message, that it was all a lie. Or it just wasn't known that there is another whole way, and we're doing it. It's not like I'm a rarity. If I can do it, you can, right?
No, everybody's got that ability.
You have the same thing in you that I have, and that hundreds and thousands of other people already have. Yeah. So I believe in you. I know you can do it.
Yeah, that's where the focus should be.
Yes.
So, wow. Okay, well, I'm going to digest all that, and I hope everybody else will seriously do that, because you just handed everybody something more than millions of dollars that, that could totally radically revolutionize their life and experience. And actually, what's that Beatles song that when they say she's leaving home? Remember that one? And maybe you don't.
Head, remember?
Yeah, well, they said
the Beatles were for me back in the day. My parents really liked them, but
yeah, I mean, I was a teenager when they were coming around in America the first time, but they were saying one of their songs said it's fun about this girl who's leaving home. Her parents have been beating her up or something, and that they didn't understand. It wasn't their fault, but they didn't understand that fun was the one thing that money couldn't buy, and you might think that fun is just being irresponsible for a few minutes and running around throwing away what you're supposed to be doing. But what you've been exposing is that there is a way to blend that into the whole rest of your life and make it all enjoyable.
Yeah, there certainly is. So, I mean, I'm happy if anybody wants support with coaching, with parenting, or with finding your passion and making money off of it, or if you have questions about the Anarcho event or anything, whether finding a midwife, if you're interested in having me come to your home.
Right.
I'm a nanny. So there's a few different TV shows right now on called, I think one's Nanny 911 and one is Super Nanny. And they hire a really super strict British nanny who comes in and like gets their kids to obey and be little robots. And it takes her a couple days and they end up thanking her and she leaves. Well, I watch those shows only for research purposes to just see control and disrespect toward children and really learn from it. And so I decided many years ago, 10 years ago, I think, to start my own service like that. And so I call myself the Unnanny, kind of a spin on unschooling and the nation.
Right.
And so they hire me to go into their homes and work with them for 2-3 days, hands-on, seeing their family dynamic and their situation. Wow. And they learn to apply peaceful parenting. And it doesn't have to be people that are only unschooling. A lot of people hire me actually that have kids in school, but they really want to apply a peaceful approach to parenting. But a lot do want to unschool too. So they hire me to help kind of be there and hands-on, transform their homes to be more conducive, to be child-friendly, how to do different things in their lives, whether it's even cooking and housekeeping tips. But it mostly surrounds supporting parents to listen to their kids. So the kids will sit down and make lists of everything that they wish they could change about the parents and everything they love about their parents. That they're their parents. So it's like a mind-blowing experience.
So you'll live in their house for 3 days, something like that.
Yeah, I only take one client a month because of the needs of my own family.
Right.
But yes, if that's something you want to learn more about, you can contact me too. So even if you're just somebody who doesn't have kids, but you just felt a connection because of your own childhood, I want to be there as a friend or as a resource or a mentor, or if you want to teach me something. If you're somebody that thinks that I have something that would really go along with that philosophy that I want her to know about, just contact me because that's what I'm here for.
Okay. Well, even if you didn't go live with them for 3 days, it would be an exchange of something that they wanted to share with you, right?
Yeah, totally.
Even if it was email, or maybe you'd get time to talk to them on the phone at some point, or something.
Yeah, I do calls over the phone. I usually don't take like just random phone calls. We get a lot of calls, like kind of from random people because of our YouTube channel. So now we kind of people don't even use the telephone anymore anyway. Like whenever we hear it ring, like our home line, we're like, what is that? It's like
right.
Nobody ever calls. So when it rings, we're like, who died? What's going on?
Well, most of your communication, I would think, would be by email, right? With most people that want to talk to you.
Facebook, surprisingly, is one of my biggest.
Okay.
So if you want to Facebook, you could contact me through there.
Facebook is just a little bit more public, though, right? I mean, if they say something to you on Facebook, it's like everybody is going to be,
But technically, I guess people can read it, like the people that run Facebook and the government, and there's all kind of philosophy or beliefs around that, which I totally understand. So I have Telegram and WhatsApp and all the different encrypted conversation services.
There's one that I recently learned about from a couple of friends that were guests, and according to, who was that? Edward Snowden said it was the most secure if you need to have a private phone conversation. It's called Signal. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah, a lot of them use that now. And he said it's the closest to actual private conversation that there is at this point.
Cool. That's good.
Doesn't cost any money. I mean, anytime somebody needs it.
Cool.
So, all right. Well, let's see what happens next, and we'll stay in touch. I hope you'll give us an update of what's happening with Anarcho or things like that, too.
I will. And thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. It's been real fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, see ya. Okay, guys, that was our friend Dayna Martin, who's been on Lost Arts Radio before, but not for quite a while. And I thought there was so much of value in what she was sharing with us. It's like if we digested what she was able to share for the rest of our lifetime, we'd get something of great value. And I want to try to do that. Inspiring people in our lives are incredibly valuable. So thank you, Dayna. I really appreciate your being on. And we'll have more live streams like this with pretty incredible people on them. And the Sunday show also, which is on Blog Talk Radio, but it's also archived on our own website, lostartsradio.com, and on, for the moment anyway, as long as we're allowed to be on it, YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Periscope and all the regular ones. But we've also opened up a channel on real.video that was started by our friend Mike Adams, and he has the intent of keeping that free, right in line with the spirit of what we've been talking about for the last 2 hours. And go to real.video. You can look up all these amazing people on there. And we've got this special club, lostartsradio.com/club, for the people that really are ready to get into learning what you can do to reclaim health, even if the doctor has told you you have some incurable condition. That's usually not true completely. We don't give medical advice in the club, but we can freely share the real information about health and consciousness, and it rolls over into kids and relationships and all that, just like our talk this afternoon did, except on that format and that platform, I can really speak freely as a researcher from more than 50 years into reversing aging and longevity and youth and health and immunity without eating toxic chemicals or injecting things into your body. The real details can be shared on that platform. So if you're interested in that, lostartsradio.com/club. Otherwise, we're currently on all these major platforms, and you can see our free videos there all the time. I really appreciate your taking time to let us share some things with you, and it's an honor to be able to talk with you once in a while. Come back, I hope, and thanks for being with us, and we'll see you again soon. Oh, and I have to say also, one last thing is that if you want to respond to this show that we just had, or give comments or suggestions or questions, or ask about the club that we have in the private forum, anything that you want to communicate, just email it in, richard@lostartsradio.com, and I'll read them all and respond as quickly as I can. So have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.